before I begin, I want to recognize all the land that we are on, and I hope that you would bring in the land and the people that are where you are. Remember that you're bringing in your family, your elders, and acknowledge them and help them come to join us so that we can learn from them as well as what we're supposed to be hearing today. And just take a moment to be reflective of how you're showing up in the room and in the space, and sort of reinvigorate the idea that you are important and you're here for a reason. So with that note, I'll turn it over to Colin.
Thank you, Jack, for inviting me to this panel. I'm excited to share information about our program here at Arizona State University. But before I do that, I'll introduce myself in my Navajo language. So yate shike do shidene she tabaha nishle do tachini bashichin torchini dashiche aro ashihin dashinale she colin ben dashijane sepata de nasha kare hosdo de shagan. So for those of you who are non-Navajo, I shared my Navajo introduction culturally. I am a citizen of the Navajo Nation, born and raised in Shiprock, New Mexico. I shared my 4 Navajo clans. That kind of establishes my clan relationships with other Navajos in the audience. So it's good for us to kind of establish that kinship and relationship, which we call ke. I'm currently living in Tempe, Arizona, and working at Arizona State University. I'm the lead for the online Indigenous education program here at ASU, and also the assistant research professor teaching in the program, and then also the assistant director for the Center for Indian Education. So I'm glad that Jack gave a land acknowledgement. You know, here at ASU, we also do the land acknowledgement, where we do recognize that, you know, Tempe and ASU resides on the ancestral homelands of Indigenous people from the area, specifically Akmil, Atem, and Pipash, Maricopa people. So with that said, you know, I want to share some good information with you about our program, which is called the Online Masters of Arts in Indigenous Education. So this is a really unique program. We feel it's very unique in the country, because we really bring together students, faculty, and staff who are passionate about Indigenous American Indian and Indigenous education. So the program really builds on trying to create this critical understanding of contemporary Indigenous education, but also acknowledging what has happened in the past. We train our students at the master's level to really envision their contributions to create positive impacts through Indian education or Indigenous education throughout their respective communities. Let me go ahead and at this point share my screen so that way you can see what I'm talking about. So what I'm sharing with you now is the website to our program, the Online Masters program. I won't go read it in detail, but basically what's unique about our program is that the courses, there's 10 total courses required for the master's program, and the courses are taught by Indigenous faculty who are experts in their respective fields, or subject matter experts. And then also we have faculty who may be non-Indigenous, but have significant experiences working within Indigenous communities, within Indigenous education. So what's really unique about our program is that, you know, students gain knowledge directly from Indigenous communities and community members. They learn how to collaborate and connect with Indigenous communities, Native communities, and then most importantly, you know, they create practical solutions for Indigenous communities. Some of the key information I wanted to share with you, as we're talking about our program, we have our 2 applications deadlines. We have a fall enrollment deadline and a spring application enrollment deadline. So we have, within both of those 2 deadlines, there's a priority deadline and the final deadline. So in fall, the priority deadline is December 15th every year, and then the final deadline is August 1st. For spring, the enrollment is deadline is priority deadline is September 15th, and the final deadline is December 1st for the spring enrollment. But in terms of what all needs to be included into these application documents or requirements is it's very similar to most graduate programs where we're asking students to complete the online application form, ask the student to submit a personal statement, asking the students to submit a writing sample between 7 to 10 pages so that the faculty can gauge your strengths in your writing. And then we're asking students to submit your resume or CV, and then 3 letters of recommendation from faculty and other mentors that you may have worked with in the past, and then submit your official transcripts. There is a small application fee as well. In terms of program requirements, we're asking students, the minimum requirement is that the students would have earned a cumulative 3.0 GPA, and that they should express interest in the field of Indigenous education, and that can be done in the personal statement. And then in terms of if we've had questions from students asking if there were any prerequisite courses that they need to take before enrolling, and the answer is no. There's no required prerequisite courses. Let me scroll down in the program offers 10 courses to earn the master's degree. Here at ASU, what's unique is that we offer the courses not throughout the full 15-week semester like most universities and institutions. We offer what's called a session A and session B. So there are 7.5 weeks per session. So the first half of the semester is session A, the second half is session B. And so students earn the credits, 3 credits per course in session A and session B. Once they have completed all 10 courses, they'll have earned 30 credits and then earn their master's degree. So here, once you go to our website, there's a tab for details, which we're at. Some of the key courses that are unique to our program is, we encourage students to learn about Indigenous knowledge systems within the education context. We want to make sure that students understand and know how to design research using a critical Indigenous research methodology, a methodological approach. Also, because we're working on exploring current issues, we want to make sure that students have an understanding and be able to articulate and research and write about what are some of the current issues in American Indian or Indigenous education. Another course is community-based participatory action research. So that's really how we want to engage with the community and best practices for doing that. There's 3 other, there's a total of 10 courses. This just features a few of the courses that we offer. In terms of one of the questions that they asked us to talk about is what would our students be able to, what career path would they be able to pursue after earning a master's in Indigenous education? So we've listed a few potential career opportunities that some of our alumni have pursued, whether that's going back to work for their tribal nations in the education department, or being a coordinator for special programs that focus on Indigenous affairs within higher ed institutions at different universities nationwide. They're tribal coordinators for special programs in ed K through 12 and higher ed programs. So this gives you a quick snapshot as to what some of our program or some of our alumni are pursuing right now. Here at ASU, we have, according to the enrollment statistics, in fall of 2021, we had 3,470 American Indian and Alaska Native students enrolled. So that's a really large enrollment number. So because of that enrollment number, we have a lot of offices and staff members that are dedicated to addressing the needs of our Native and Indigenous students. So we do offer a lot of support to our students, both those students who are in person on campus, but also we offer support for those who are online students, specifically for our Indigenous education program. So that's kind of some key highlights of our program. And I'll be able to answer more questions when we get to that point. Jack, would you like me to
if you could stop sharing, that would be great. Well, thank you, Colin. We're going to go ahead and move on, and I'm going to go ahead and ask Paula if she would share from Harvard University about her program.
Yes, I'm gonna share my screen as well. I apologize, my cat is really talkative right now. She's never done that, so you might hear her in the background. Oh goodness, she just really just started. Let's see.
At least you're not a cat face.
Yes, that is very much so. Let me see. Ah, found it. Share. Actually, I'm gonna close my door real quickly. See if that helps. I'm sorry. She's gonna be distracting to me, but anyways, so hello everyone. My name is Paula Munoz. I am an assistant director of admissions at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. I'm also an alumna of a master's program from the class of 2019. And so I'm really passionate always about sharing about HGSE as a whole, but also my experience and kind of what made it so impactful that I've decided to stay and kind of continue to share the knowledge and just the opportunities at the school. So to kick it off, I'll start talking about our degree programs. We do offer 3 different degree programs, the Doctor of Philosophy in Education, the Doctor of Education Leadership, and Masters in Education. Let me see. With our Doctor of Philosophy in Education, interfaculty program is offered through the Harvard Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. So when you apply for this program, you would actually be applying to the Harvard Faculty of Arts and Sciences. In this way, it allows you to really cultivate what you are looking to do your research for the next 5 to 8 years during your time at Harvard, and really use all the different schools to mold that. And it prepares academics, researchers, policymakers, and leaders who will improve education through regular scholarships. And we offer 3 concentrations, which are listed here. The first being culture, institution, society. Second, education policy and program evaluation. And the third, human development and learning and teaching. Our Doctor of Education Leadership, or the EDLD, is our practice-based doctoral program. This program is a 3-year program, and it prepares graduates to lead a system-level transformation of the American pre-K through 12 education sector. And both the PhD program and the EDLD program are fully funded. And so that's always something that's really exciting for our applicants to know and learn a little bit more about. And as for our Master's in Education, this is for those who are looking to acquire more of a general theoretical background of understanding practice, acquire the different foundations needing to tackle challenges facing the field of education. You're able to really personalize your education experiences. You'll see in a second that we offer 5 programs as well as 5 concentrations and different foundation courses, which I won't get too much into, but we can connect afterwards if you're kind of curious of what that personalization looks like. And you're allowed to, again, concentrate in a particular area, develop professional skills, and really just take your career to the next level. Or for some of our applicants, change careers altogether. And so we've had applicants who have come to us from the field of like engineering, biology, and such, who either want to combine their 2 passions, or they just other areas of their lives really call them to the field of education. And so they're using this as a stepping stone into what's next in their life. Like I mentioned, we have 5 programs listed here, with the focus is on leadership, organization, entrepreneurship, policy and analysis, human development, learning design, so curriculum, innovation, technology. And these 4 were offered this previous academic year. The teaching and teacher leadership was put on hold given the pandemic and us not being too sure if we can offer the needed requirements for certification and licensure. We are hoping to have this back for the fall 2022 application. I encourage you to check out our website throughout the summer for the most accurate information. If we've learned anything from this pandemic is things are always changing. And so I just want to be mindful that this is a program we're hoping to launch again, but as this point, we're still not 100% sure how that's going to look like. And then we do offer 5 concentrations, which can be seen as minors. And this can really also enhance a little bit more your focus. And these include arts and learning, early childhood, global education, higher ed, as well as literacy and languages. And kind of the idea that I like to give to prospective students in terms of, should I do a concentration or not? These are fully optional. It's just my own experience. I was working in undergraduate admissions prior, and I just had a tough time implementing the changes that I wanted to be seen, especially with the groups of students that I was working with in inner city Chicago who were very similar to my own upbringing, either immigrant families, non-English speakers, and such, in accessing higher education. But the area I wasn't too well versed in was policy. And so I did more of the policy and analysis program with the concentration of higher education. Or if you're interested in policy and early childhood education, you can do that. So it really encourages that personalization that I talked about earlier. What are our students doing after HGSE? And so this varies. We have students who work in the pre-K through 12 sector, nonprofits, higher education, media, tech, consulting, government, healthcare, and just a few examples of some. And they're working as either administration, teaching, training, analysts, technology, counseling. And so there's so much flexibility in areas that our alumni participate after leaving HGSE. And something that I always love to talk about is the community. I know oftentimes when people are looking at graduate programs, their key focus is what programs, what degrees are being offered, what do the courses look like, but really community really enhances what you're learning within the classroom and just giving that balance of what you're passionate about. And it's something I really enjoyed during my time at HGSE. To kind of give you an overview of the breakdown of our student profile for the class of 2019, it was about 71% female, while a quarter was about male, 1% identified as other, while 4% did not identify their gender. 15% are part of the LGBTQ community, and 23% also identified as first generation. A quarter are international students, while a third self-identified as students of color. We're not doing as great in terms of Native and Indigenous populations at the School of Education. I think we're closer to 1%. So it's an area that I'm really passionate and really growing and trying to connect. So hopefully this is one of the ways that I can get that started and moving, just because again, I think there's so much that we can offer different populations of students. The briefcases on the lower left give the years of work experience of our students prior to coming to HGSE. Again, this is just some general knowledge for some people who are like, how much years for those coming into Ed.M program? 4.2 is the average. Our a doctoral program leadership is 10.3, PhD is 5.2, but really don't focus on this too much because overall our students come between finishing undergrad to 30 plus years of work experience. So there really isn't a perfect formula of like when to apply. It's just really knowing what you're passionate about and what areas you want to develop during your time at grad school. And one last key feature about our school is about 94% of students enroll full-time. And I think that really enhances the community at HGSE. Again, this might not be the concept for everyone. Others might be looking for a part-time program, but it's kind of seen as a sabbatical year for a lot of people and taking just this 9 months off to really focus on themselves, their career, what they're looking forward to, which also just enhances how much they're really in tune with class material, with their peers, getting involved within the community, not only at HGSE, but also in Cambridge, Boston, and beyond. And then another key aspect that I fully enjoyed during my time at HGSE and several people at our school as well is getting involved in different student organizations and groups. Here's a list of some of the affinity groups at HGSE. And one that you may be interested in is our Future Indigenous Educators Resisting Colonial Education. I know that's a mouthful. They also go by FIERCE. And there's a picture of FIERCE from my year here. And then we also offer the Alumni of Color Conference, which I was a tri-chair for during my time at HGSE. And then last year, one of their opening event was a panel on a new vision of higher education for Indigenous communities, which can be seen here. And I'll link the YouTube video to that in the chat after I'm done presenting. It was very informative, and it's just a way how the Indigenous community, both at HGSE and beyond, it highlighted different alumni, both from our school and across Harvard, and just talking about what the vision in higher education, kind of like what I mentioned earlier, where some schools are great at attracting students from Native populations while others are still struggling. And so I learned a lot where I'm trying to pull and continue to just thrive in that area. And again, one thing that I had mentioned a little bit is being part of the HGSE community, but also being part of the greater Harvard University community. You'll have access to cross-register at any of the Harvard schools, as well as MIT, attend lectures at the Kennedy School, at the college. And so there's a lot of different opportunities to really get involved. As well as coursework at the School of Ed. This is a slide I love to use whenever I'm hosting any of our student of color panels and events. And we do have two courses that focus on Native Americans in the 21st century, here taught by Joseph Kellett and Eric Henson. But also I encourage you to check out HUNAP, or the Harvard University Native American program. Here I took a screenshot of one of their pages, which shows courses across Harvard University that have a focus on Native American and Indigenous topics. And so you can see there's been growth even within the last year, where spring we have 19, in fall 2020 there's were 20 that were offered. It's also a great resource if you're interested in applying to Harvard as a whole. They work as a liaison between prospective students and all of our offices, and they offer a lot of different networking opportunities with their alumni, events, lectures, etc. So it's a really good place and a great resource of supportive people. And then Cambridge and Boston's a really great area to live in. There's just a lot in terms of kind of getting that educational experience that you're looking for with internships in government, big think tanks, nonprofits, different public school and private schools, higher education, but as well on pre-pandemic, kind of the social things with like theater, music, and different ways to just disconnect and really enhance your experience during your time here. And finally, I want to talk about kind of just funding, financial aid, and application. So our tuition is about $51,000. Again, you can find more information about the cost of attendance on the financial aid website. But like our two doctoral programs, those are fully funded. For our Ed.M programs, there is much more gap. And so for financial assistance, there's need-based grants, work study, and internships. We do offer some merit scholarships. The first one, you are automatically included in that when you applied. The South Sands is for those interested in early childhood. Urban Scholars are for individuals who have been and want to continue to be committed in working in urban areas. And there's also just other Harvard scholarships you can find. Loans are an option. And so you really want to start thinking about that. I know for me, it was a bit of a shock when I got my financial aid package and I saw that gap. And it's just starting to have those conversations with myself, my family, mentors of what are the best ways to save money or look for money to really help meet that gap. Again, our financial aid office is a great resource, and our staff is always really willing to help individuals connect and just talk about concerns they might have. And also the Committee on General Scholarships is another great place to look for information. In terms of our application requirements, you have to submit an application form, a statement of purpose, your resume, transcripts from any institution that you receive credits, 3 letters of recommendation. In terms of standardized testing, GRE was optional this past year. It's going to be optional again this next application cycle, given the pandemic is still making things very difficult for people to schedule and take the test. If you are a non-native English speaker, the TOEFL or the IELTS are also required. I did put the deadline for this past cycle of January 5th. It's usually around this time. It tends to be the first Monday in January after the holidays. However, this year was a Tuesday, so I didn't want to give a date just yet. And then just some pieces of advice in terms of your statement of purpose. Make sure that your voice comes through the application. I think oftentimes people think of Harvard as being a place where they have to really compete and try to show how smart they are or who they know. But honestly, we are looking for students who are very passionate and can articulate why they are continuing to look for pursuing their education in the field of ed, and also describe your journey to this point. I know for me, it was discussing kind of those frustrations that I was feeling in my current job where I lacked the knowledge of how policy works and how it led me to apply for graduate programs. Articulate your goals. What do you want to achieve during your time at HGSE, but also after? And demonstrate how specific program will help you achieve this, whether it's certain faculty, coursework, internships that you're are hoping to do during your time at HGSE. And don't use this time to rehash your resume. I think a lot of individuals feel like they have to start putting a lot of that. We already have that, no need for that. And edit, ask for feedback, and also remember this is a writing sample, so make sure that you have a few people read through it. I know I had my sister read through it just so to make sure that my voice was still there, and so she was really helpful. So a combination of different individuals. Again, with our letter of recommendations, choose individuals who know you well, not individuals who you think would impress us. And they should be able to address both academic and professional abilities, and really just talk through your experience. So connect with them, let them know why you're pursuing a graduate degree and what your goals are. And finally, just connect with us. We would love to get to know you a little bit better, get to know your goals. So screenshot this page, come back. We do offer our annual diversity recruitment program, usually happens at the end of October. And I would love to see many of you there if you can make it. And it's just a really great way, again, to connect with the community and get to know our programs, our kind of the social life, internships, and so much more. And finally, again, feel free to connect with me if you want to just have any other questions, want to follow up with anything. Right now, we're not accepting one-on-one appointments. However, if you're attending this and you send me an email hoping to connect, I can meet with you for 20 minutes via Zoom. Just let me know that this is how you connected with me originally, and I would make that exception during this time. Wonderful, thank you. And I'm sure I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have at the end.
Great, thank you, Bala. I will turn it over to Regina and let her introduce herself and her programming.
Hello, everybody. This is my first time joining a session like this. So excuse my maybe informality or the fact that I'm not following the program in certain ways, but I'm glad to be here. I was asked to be here. I'm at University of Arizona, and I'm a department head for a department called Education Policy Studies and Practice. And I'm the director for the Center for the Study of Higher Education. And these are all the College of Education at the University of Arizona. And so my program that I'm going to talk to you about is not specifically aimed at Indigenous students or Native American curricula or populations. It's actually a program for students who, for instance, you might have had certain experiences at college where people who work at the college, people who work at your university have helped you tremendously or have been resources or supports for you. And you start to think, maybe I can go into that as a career. Maybe I can be an advisor. Maybe I can be a staff person working in higher education or in college access programs for nonprofits, for universities, for tribal colleges, right? Anything along these lines. If you're interested in serving as a sort of student services support person, staff person in higher education, the program to think about would be a higher education program, right? So you can get a master's degree in higher education at the University of Arizona. So that's the program that I'm here representing. And I can talk a little bit more about the university as a whole and the College of Education and some other opportunities that are there as well. So education is not just all about, you know, becoming a teacher, but it could be being a professional staff support person in a college or university, right? Or a community college. It could also be about thinking ahead to a longer term future of being an administrator or a high level administrator at a community college or university who's making decisions about student success, about Indigenous communities, about the relationship between the university and Indigenous tribes, people, lands, et cetera, right? So it's sort of something to think about long term. So I'll get into some specifics about the master's program that we offer. And I'll say up front, and I'll go ahead and share my screen. Again, I don't have any fancy, you know, PowerPoints or anything like that, because I don't normally do recruiting. I'm actually the head of the whole department. But that's representative of the community we have here in our department and in our program. So this gives you a little bit of a flavor of what we're all about. We're a combination of a doctoral program, a PhD program, and a master's degree program. Oh, there's my reminder. Let me get rid of that. I'm sorry that my computer is slow today. Oops. Let me go back. Look at my email, it's all confidential. Okay. Okay, so we're committed to social justice in general. We have a very diverse faculty. So I'm the department head. I'm of mixed race background. I'm actually not Indigenous in any way, even though people might mistake me for that. But we have Latinx faculty who are part of our local community, who've come through the local schools here. One of our faculty members, Karina Salazar, is a graduate of Sunnyside School Districts in South Tucson. She does critical statistics and data collection and college access. We have other faculty who do global transnational affairs. We study issues of social justice, right, race, dynamics of higher education, HSI servingness, et cetera. So just to give you a sense, you know, this is the number of PhD students we admit. Normally, you have to have a master's degree to get into our PhD program. But in our master's program, there's lots of overlap with the PhD, and you're actually in classes with PhD students. And we have a lot of students who decide when they're a master's student, I want to go on to the PhD, and we have a track that you can move into that. So you could end after 2 years with your master's degree program and go straight into any sort of a practice or position in higher education. Or you can decide to continue your education either immediately or a few years down the road as a PhD student. And so we will help you transfer a whole bunch of your courses. And so just to give you a sense of our student community, I know somebody was sharing statistics. So here's what our students look like. So you can see it's over a third, almost half at this point, are students of color from underrepresented groups. We're about 8% Native American. And again, that's of about 130 students total, right? So, and I'll tell you a little bit more about why we might have a larger number of Native American students. And a lot of our students are first generation, and they're committed to college access programming and social justice for first generation, underrepresented groups, immigrant backgrounds, et cetera. So that gives you a sense again, and please, if I'm forgetting anything, later on, you feel free to ask me questions. So I'll tell you a little bit more about our master's degree program, and then a program we have called Native SOAR within our department as a whole. So this just gives you a sense here of what the higher education master's degree is. You basically are graduating with the ability to become a professional in education. To give you some examples, you might be a community director in residence life. You might be the director of a cultural center, Native American student affairs. You could be a financial aid officer. You could be working in admissions, recruitment, and outreaching to students like yourself. So these are some examples. You could be doing coordinating STEM research programs, right? There's a whole range of things that you could be doing, advising at community colleges, outreach, et cetera. So we have the core requirements are relatively minimal. So you take an introduction to higher education research, a statistics class, and a class about college students, college student development, personnel issues with colleges, college students, and then you take a general course in organizations and administration in higher education, so you can get a sense of the larger field as a whole. We now have a faculty member named J.D. Lopez. His name's Jameson D. Lopez. He's an Indigenous scholar. He's been with us now we hired him 3 years ago, and he teaches the intro stats class, and he teaches it in a way that you really probably haven't seen a lot in the academy before, but he does it from an Indigenous perspective. His research is all about constructing data sets that are meaningful to Indigenous communities and help us to include Native Americans as part of larger data sets, because oftentimes the idea is, you get removed because you're the 1%, right? And you can't have any statistical power with 1%. So he's challenging all of that. He's using creation stories and myths and cultural aspects that span different tribes so that he could measure it more effectively. So it's very sort of Indigenous centric, and he teaches a course also called Indigenous Statistics and some related classes. So he has really been in the past 3 years changing the flavor of our department in our higher education program, and he graduated from ASU with his doctoral degree. So thanks for all the support that he got there in becoming the scholar that he is. So that's great. Okay, and so we also have we have a history of graduating students who are now some of the best higher education faculty across the country, right? So in the past several years, we've graduated Dr. Christine Nelson, who teaches at University of Denver, Dr. Natalie Youngblood, who teaches at University of Oklahoma, We graduated Amanda Cecchini, who teaches at ASU now. And so other than American Indian Studies, higher education is a field with a growing number of scholars who are Indigenous and a growing number of faculty members, which is really important to have throughout different disciplines and teaching different courses in colleges and universities. And we have at University of Arizona several Indigenous faculty members throughout the College of Ed also, who in our program, you can take courses with them as well. So we have, let's see, Valerie Shirley and Jeremy Garcia run a program called Indigenous Teacher Education Program. So they're helping to train teachers to teach Indigenous populations, and they're Indigenous themselves, of course. So you're free to take courses, lots of electives with people like that who are teaching courses. We have Sheila Nichols, who teaches courses in language, reading, and culture. Mary Jo Fox is in American Indian Education, and she has a cross-listed course with us on tribal colleges. And of course, we have several faculty who are doing STEM-related courses and doing STEM-related research, particularly in environmental justice. So being part of our higher ed program allows you to take courses throughout the whole university. We don't restrict you to a certain type of course. You could take lots of electives beyond the core. And so Native SOAR is a program that is often linked to funding. And so as part of this program, it's basically a service learning program where undergraduates at the University of Arizona go out to, you can see here some of these K-12 schools and locations across Pima County. Now, given the online space that we had to cultivate over the course of last year, we've now expanded throughout the whole state and into New Mexico. And it's a wonderful program. It's relatively small, but it's growing. And it's mainly because of these three wonderful women here who are essentially running this program, expanding it, recruiting throughout schools, different counties, et cetera, into reservations across, across the state and of course, New Mexico, given their own backgrounds. And so that's the team. Let me see if I can, here we go. So I think that the link is in the chat there, but you can learn more about each of these people, and they're fantastic. And if you become part of this program, my RIA is, it says here, graduate assistant, right? So we have 2 graduate assistantships where if you move into our program, oftentimes Indigenous students are interested in becoming part of this program. It's a great community. It's like a family. Our whole program is actually like a family. We just yesterday had 2 students who were Indigenous scholars interested in our program, and we set up a Zoom immediately, and we had a whole hour-and-a-half conversation with them. So we're available to you at any time. And when I say we, it was myself and 3 other faculty members, Felice and Myria, who got on to explain the program, to explain everything about the application process. So I know there's a lot to take in today, but definitely you can follow up with me directly as the department head of this department and program. And we will immediately, give you the attention and any kind of details, or no question is stupid. We get great questions, and it's good to hear questions because we don't know what you don't know until you tell us, so we can explain to you. And that's what we're all about, right? In higher education, helping students transition to college. That's my research, transition into college. We also try to do beyond service learning, and that service learning involves mentoring new students to basically encourage them into the college pathway, right? And so that's what Native SOAR is all about. This team, as well as the undergraduates who are enrolled in the class. And these undergraduates are not just in education, they're in STEM fields, they're in the humanities, they're all over the university. And they're out there in the community mentoring students who are as young as middle school about college, and just spending time with them, answering their questions, doing activities, right? And eventually developing sort of a pathway for those students into any university, right? Not just University of Arizona. So that's what that program's all about. And again, it's often a source of funding if you don't have funding coming in. And that assistantship provides you with full tuition, plus a stipend over the course of the academic year of about $16,000 to help support your own trajectory through your degree, your master's degree, and sometimes through your doctoral degree. So Maria is actually thinking about applying to our doctoral program to continue the work that she's doing in the community she really has helped build, especially during last year, which was a trying year for everyone, losing family members. And it was difficult, but we saw our community come together, and people are still recovering, but still going strong. So let me see, that's, I think about, there's a nice video here if you go to the link so that you can click on and learn more about Native SOAR and what we're all about here. Our admissions process for this year was December 15th was the deadline for priority admission and funding. January 22nd was the deadline for the final deadline, but when we say final, we're kind of flexible here. So if you really are currently thinking of applying, definitely get in touch with us. The students we met with yesterday are going to be applying. So we look at all applications as a whole faculty. We do holistic admissions, no GRE. Again, repeat, no GRE. We have been doing holistic admissions for 10, 12 years now. And we finally were able to eliminate the GRE altogether. So we have done that, so you don't have to worry about that. You give us a statement of purpose, you get your recommendation letters in, your transcripts, and that's about it. So again, we look at you as a whole and what your interests are and how they match with the type of mission we have here, the values we have, and what we're all engaged in trying to do here in higher education. I guess I'll end there, and hopefully, if I left any gaps, I'll take questions later.
Great, thank you, Regina. And now I'll turn it over to Marie with Carnegie Mellon.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. I do have a presentation that I'll share. My name is Marie Coleman, and I'm with Carnegie Mellon University's Hines College, and I'm the executive director of our program in Washington, D.C. So I'm excited to be talking to you all today. I'm the only representative from a public policy school, and so maybe I want to talk a little bit about careers in education that are powered with public policy. But I think it's a really exciting time to be in a career in education. So I commend all of you for your interests. It's such a dynamic and very broad career path. There's just so much has transformed in education probably over the past 20 and 30 years based on how much we know about how people learn and how you can teach effectively. And I think just the past year with our experience going virtual and going online from K through 12 and in through higher education, and even what you all are experiencing, there's just so much transformation that I think is going to happen. And we need good people to work on those issues and really bring some transformation into our education system to make it even more accessible and available to all of us. So I think it's a great time to be looking at a career in education. So I'm with Carnegie Mellon University, and hopefully most of you have heard of us. We're based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we're very well known for technology and the arts and entrepreneurship and things like robotics and artificial intelligence, and all of that is sitting on our campus. The Hines College is our graduate school for public policy and management. And so it's we sit in a wonderful location to be studying the impacts of technology. If you're thinking about sort of careers in education, I listed out here some of the pathways or some of the careers that our students who study public policy, what they wind up doing when they graduate. And so we have a lot of alums who go into schools and school systems. So they might become academic leaders and managers. They focus on things like data analysis. Data analytics is very important in education, as well as evaluation. They might be working on things like strategy and performance management. And of course, because we're very heavy background in tech, there's certainly students that go on to work in sort of technology and sort of transformation initiatives within schools and school systems. We have a lot of students who want to do public policy. And so they go to policy-making organizations. They might go on the Hill. Of course, all the legislation that happens there around education. They also go to work for associations, advocacy organizations, and unions. And then finally, they go to work in government. So for the federal government, Department of Education, state government, and local government and school boards. So there's sort of a lot of different careers that you can go into that are education focused with a public policy degree. And I should say we're a well-known public policy school, but there are certainly many public policy schools out there. There's over 250. In fact, Arizona State, University of Arizona, Harvard have great public policy schools too. So don't forget that when you're thinking about your career in education, you may want to look at some of the public policy schools, especially if policy is something that you're really interested in. So I'll spend a few minutes talking about Hinds College specifically and the program that I run in particular. So as I said, we're at the Hinds College. We're a graduate school for public policy, but we're a really unique organization in that we have two schools within our college. One is the Public Policy and Management School, but the other is the Information Systems and Management School. So it's a really unique co-location of these two topics that may seem very separate, but in fact, there's a lot of integration and overlap between them. We're really all about putting together things like analytics, technology, implementation, meaning that as a student, you get a lot of opportunities to put into practice what you're learning so that you can have real world impact. And as we know, technology is really transforming so many things, and especially education, given what's happened over the last year. So there's a lot to apply and learn from this going forward. On our campus, we also have some really interesting and unique centers that are there that sort of feed into this, to that sort of implementation and application side of things. So we have the Block Center for Technology and Society, which is really looking at the impact of AI and cognitive tutors on learning. And they're doing a number of studies looking at the future of work and how some of those tutors could help advance education, especially at the high school level, to get more students ready for tech-centric careers. We also have another center at Carnegie Mellon University called the Human Computer Interaction Institute. And it's really looking specifically at how humans and computers interact. And of course, a big part of that is in learning. And so I think it's so exciting to have these centers on campus where you can learn about how these apply to how people learn and to education. For our master's program, we have a number of different programs that might be relevant, but the one that I know most about and the one that you may want to consider is our Master of Science in Public Policy and Management. And we have several different track options. Basically, it's a full-time program, a 2-year program. We do have a 3-semester option if you have 3 to 5 years of work experience, but the majority of our students do one of these 4 2-year tracks. We have a flagship program, which is located in Pittsburgh for 2 years, and there are several concentrations within that. There's a data analytics track, so if you're really interested in working with data, that could be a track that you would consider. It's a STEM track, also a 2-year track. Both of the years are located in Pittsburgh. I oversee our Washington, D.C. track, and that is for students who are interested in doing a year in Pittsburgh, a year in Washington, D.C. And a key feature of that is a fellowship experience in Washington, working 4 days a week for an organization. So if you are interested in eventually winding up in Washington, D.C., we'd love to see you apply for that track. And our last track is a global track. So that track has 1 year at our location in Australia, the second year in Pittsburgh, and it's really for students who want an international perspective. But those are basically the 4 different tracks that we offer. And then we have several concentration areas. Our DC track is really focused around the policy analysis concentration area, but these are other concentration areas also available to our MSPPM students. As I said, a big part of our program is around gaining experience in the field. And one of that is through a capstone project that all of our students do. It's called System Synthesis. And we've done a number of them focused around education projects. So one of them a few years ago was to develop a new science and tech high school for the Pittsburgh Public School Districts, which is our district nearest to our university in Pittsburgh. And the students worked with the superintendent of education on developing plans for the school. And actually one of the students from that project was then hired to be the project manager in the implementation and building of that school. And it now exists in Pittsburgh as one of their magnet high schools. So that was a really exciting endeavor. And then through our DC program, we've also done a number of projects with national organizations focused on education. With the Department of Education's National Center for Education Statistics, we've done some data projects with them. They collect a lot of data nationally around education, K through 12 education. And so we've worked with them on a number of data projects. We've worked with an organization called Communities in Schools, which is a program to help support students all across the US through parents and volunteers and community members. And so we help them to develop an evaluation survey to help share information across various programs and regions. And then GAO, which is the US Government Accountability Office, so sort of focused on the federal policy, they do evaluations of education and education organizations. And they had us looking a number of years ago at the K through, K through 16 pipeline. And so looking at that pipeline from high school through college for students. And so we assisted them as they got launched on that project as well. So there's lots of opportunities to incorporate sort of education and impact on education through our program. This is just some highlights of some of our recent alums and what they're currently doing and their experience. So as you can see, we have alums that work at the Department of Education, US Department of Education. We have alums that work at public schools or school systems like DC Public Schools. We have an alum who's the Director of Talent for Education Pioneers, which is a really wonderful national organization focused on getting more talent into K through 12 education. And then we have another alum who's, sorry, there's a little typo there, but she's at the American Association of State Colleges and Universities doing data work there. So as you can see, a public policy degree could be a great pathway into having an impact on education if you're interested in that. So I'll talk really quickly about our admissions and scholarships for the Heinz College, and happy to share more information with you afterwards. We're very similar to what most of the group had talked about in terms of their requirements. We do want a transcript, 2 recommendations, a resume, a personal statement, the TOEFL or IELTS if you're not a native American speaker, English speaker. This year, the GRE and GMATs were optional. And I suspect we still haven't made that decision for the next year. It's the GRE, because of the quantitative nature of our program, we do like to have either courses, for example, in statistics or economics. We like to see that students have taken those courses, and if not, taken the GRE and GMAT, just to give us some idea of analytical ability. So that is important to our program. So we need to see that. But as I said, this year it was optional, and we're still discussing that for next year. I even think last year it was optional as well. There is a video interview component, which is optional. We do not charge an application fee. And there is no separate application to be considered for merit-based scholarships. You just check the box on our application form, and we will consider you for scholarships. We have a number of admissions partnerships, and we have one with the American Indian College Fund. So there's a guaranteed 30% of tuition scholarship, and we review up to 100% based on sort of fit and background and you know, accomplishment of the student based on the application. Let's see, I also wanted to point out some resources for you all to consider and explore, especially if sort of that idea of public policy is of interest to you. The first one is a program called the PPIA program, Public Policy and International Affairs. And hopefully you've heard of this before. The Heinz College, Carnegie Mellon has been very involved with it over the years. Harvard University has also been involved, in a number of other universities as well. But each summer we run a summer institute for rising seniors. So if you're currently a junior or younger, you might want to look out for this program. It's a great opportunity to get a taste of public policy graduate school and the potential careers in public service that can result. So I highly recommend you look at that program. I think it's just, I'll put the post after I'm done, but it's, I think, ppiaprogram.org. In addition to the summer program, there's also a public service weekend that we hold every summer. So that's targeted to undergrads, although if you're a year or two out, we will still consider you for participation. But that again is just a short weekend to give you again a little taste of what Carnegie Mellon and Heinz College is like, and what grad school and public policy would be like. There's also Teach for America is also another great organization that would be something that you would apply to once you graduate, and it gives you a chance to try out teaching in a number of different organizations around the country. And the last that I wanted to mention is a program that's actually run by Heinz College. It's our Council for Diversity and Richness and Inclusion. It's our club of graduate students at Heinz College, and they have put together a diversity and policy mentor program that is for prospective students to the Heinz College. So if you're planning to apply and you would like to have a current student be a mentor to you in terms of your application, they will actually go through and select. I think they try to select everyone that wants a mentor will get assigned a mentor of a current student, but they're there to help you with any questions you might have. They can review essays, you know, and just sort of give you advice. I think it's very helpful for students who, you know, maybe if it's your, you know, well, most likely your first time applying to grad school, but if you need just some extra encouragement, I think it's a great program to take part in. There's no cost, of course, and they outreach through the admissions office. So you would just let them know if you wanted to participate in that. So I think that's it. On this slide here, I have my name and contact information, as well as that of our Director of Admissions. And we welcome any questions that you may have today or in the future. So thank you so much for having me.
Great. Thank you so much, Marie. Great information. And now we'll turn it over to John, who's also from Harvard.
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, it's always great to hear all the different programs and kind of, rewind and maybe position myself in one of them somewhere, but my name is John Aslanian, the Director of Recruitment and Student Affairs at the Graduate School of Design at Harvard. And I got my master's at a school of education in educational development. So it was a sort of a program based in Paulo Freire, critical pedagogy, sort of thinking about how education can be used as a tool for development and but also a tool for the dismantling of oppressive structures that we all understand are built into educational systems in many ways. So I think one thing that I'd like to talk about, I'm only going to talk about one program in particular today, but I'll give you a brief overview of some of the things at the GSD. But I think it's important to think about not just what you learn and why you go to grad school and what you learn, but also how you learn. And so thinking about design schools, if you look behind me here, this is our classroom, right? It's 5 stories of open space with people working on projects basically 24 hours a day. And so, thinking about different ways, not just physically about, the spaces in which we learn, because it doesn't have to be in a formal structure either. There's different forms of education. And so, I'll share just a few slides and then so we can save some time for questions as well. Here we go. And so, sorry about that. There we go. So we're talking this week about a lot of different aspects and how they relate to design, because there's no, usually people that go to design school, they've either studied architecture or landscape architecture or something in undergrad, or they haven't. And actually the majority haven't. So it's not uncommon to be looking at going into something else and stumble upon design programs as something that might actually appeal. And so, the first thing I'd say is just to not think about disciplines as much as think about the topics that you're interested in. And so these are all topics that are essential at our school. Land, water, air, sure, like those are essential aspects of the environments in which we're trying to reshape or trying to influence and impact through our design decisions. When you look at the world around you, anything that's not just untouched, which one could argue nothing has been untouched. It's a design decision, right? Somebody decided to build housing in a certain particular way. Somebody decided to put a road in a certain particular place. Somebody decided to, divert a river in a certain way. So all those things, those are design decisions. And, if we can have a different set of voices in those rooms about who's making those decisions, it makes a big difference. It makes a big impact, direct impact on society. So quick thing about our school, there's over 129 different undergraduate majors that come into the design school. So right there, you can see that you have a lot of different backgrounds coming in to study. Over 54 languages spoken. We're over 55% international. So, one of the things that brought me to study a degree in education was living overseas for several years. And, after about 7 years of encountering, indigenous issues all over the world and seeing the common threads and, seeing different migratory issues all around the world and common threads and environmental issues and common threads, I thought about design school. I thought about other types of programs, but I really settled on education as being the way in which you can kind of have that force multiplier to be able to sort of impact larger groups and sort of get people thinking. I sort of accepted that I wasn't necessarily going to be the person that was going to do all the work, but if I can impact people that are in education, or through education. So I just want to, even though I'm representing the, the design school, I want to, applaud you for thinking about going to higher education for education itself. I think that there's a lot that can be learned about just how do we learn, what do we learn. Our school is a STEM school as well. All of our programs are STEM designated. So, that opens up a lot of other, funding opportunities. Sometimes people don't think about that. If a program has to do with science, technology, engineering, mathematics in some fashion, and these design programs do, that can open up a lot more scholarship opportunities as well. So we're a big school, but it's all broken down into really small groups. We study through primarily the studio format and the seminar format. So collaboration is one of the key components to to everything that we're doing. So our degree programs are in architecture, landscape architecture, urban planning, urban design, design engineering, and a variety of areas that are under what we call design studies. And like my colleague Paula from the School of Education mentioned already, once you're a graduate student at Harvard, you are able to cross-register across all the different schools. So if you have particular themes or topics or issues, you can always, if you're at the School of Education, I would encourage you to think about taking the class at the design school, for example. But the program I wanted to mention today is our summer certificate program. It's called Design Discovery, and this summer we're going to be doing it virtually. And it's about how you learn, right? So it's about expanding the toolkit and the mindset that you have at your disposal as an educator. And so what we're talking about are things like divergent thinking, so which is not necessarily seeking a particular answer, but coming from a particular idea and seeing where it takes you, that which is based in imagination and creativity, right? And then also the fact that, we're dealing with the built environment. So putting together these sort of spatial dimensions of all the big issues that we're all, dealing with, thinking about, confronted with on a daily basis, right? There's a spatial component to that, and sort of understanding how to think and operate in a spatial context can be really effective. And then, like I mentioned, the collaboration, through studios, and sort of starting to understand what is this pedagogy of design. That's very open-ended and very liberating for a lot of people when they experience it. So this program is kind of a little entry point. It can help you on your way to grad school, but it can also just help you as an educator. And so, we do that through various design exercises. There's lectures every day. There are discussions and group work. It's kind of a combination of synchronous work and sort of offline kind of things that you would do. And again, like I said, it's 4 weeks long. There's need-based scholarships that are available. So it's a very inexpensive program. It's to begin with, it's $2,400. But like I said, there's plenty of scholarships too. So it's not, it could very well cost nothing, I mean, there's the time and there's the effort and all that, we have to think of that as a cost as well, or commitment. So that's the website. And so I think that that's the program that, if I'm talking to somebody who's in education, I want them to say, okay, take a month out of the summer and do something that's a different way of learning, because that you don't have to be an art teacher. You don't have to be in creative arts. You can just be somebody that has a lot of ideas and wants to sort of stretch themselves a little bit, challenge themselves in a different way. As was mentioned, HUNAP at Harvard is a fantastic resource. We also have the HIDC, which is the Harvard Indigenous Design Collective, which is a number of our Indigenous students have created that. And we've had various studios where we're doing work. Our graduate programs are very much hands-on. So we've done programs where we're working with communities in Vancouver or in Minnesota, and sort of helping communities work through some design issues that they're dealing with. They have a piece of land they want to develop. What's the best way? Things like that. And then I'd also put a plug in for Graduate Horizons, which I think is a great program, to help sort of people get around this idea of applying for doctoral programs or master's programs. And it's a good boot camp program. And then finally, there's my email. If you're interested in the summer program or just kind of design education in general, by all means, you can reach out to me. We can set up a time to talk, and then the website for the summer program, as well as the Instagram for the HIDC. So thanks.
Great. I keep looking for other resources and having to come back to the screen. Well, I'm looking at the students now to see if you have any questions. We have shared some information with you. If you have a question, you can raise your hand or just type it into the chat box. But I think that, some of the things I'll put out, pull out today that I think are super important. One is Graduate Horizons. As I could see the heads nod, moving into this process of going to grad school is super important for Native people in general and people of color, but it's also one of those things where you really need to get clear about like what is the intention behind the reason you're going. And it's not because we want you to be clear for our sake, it's because this is it's a commitment and it's an investment and it's worthwhile to do. And as soon as you can sort of tell us a little bit more about the interest factor for you, that becomes more exciting for us. Because the thing is that when you begin to sort of illustrate or share or develop a concept that means that that lends to your values and the way that you see yourself sort of surfacing in the world, like it motivates us to be more helpful to figure out like, how do we help you do the thing? And so when you can tell us that storyline and when you can give us that information, there's so much more that we can sort of offer and sort of, instigate in some instances to sort of be helpful to the outcomes. And that, that is the storyline for a number of reasons, like whether that's funding, which is always the pragmatic, and John has shared this in other presentations, don't make funding the reason why you're choosing to go to school or not, because you can't afford it. So stop thinking about it. That's the thing. And you can't afford it, so that's the thing, or they're already the given. So the thing is to get to the story of like, why do you want to go to school? And then tell us, and then we'll figure out like how to fund it for you. So just know that you're not going to afford it. Who cares? Now, why are you doing it? That's awesome. We care. So get to that frame of thinking as you sort of step forward into this decision-making factor. And then, something I often mention, and we talked about it yesterday a little bit, there is never a good time to decide to go to graduate school. So I don't know what you're waiting for. We ask that you have some experience, which is great, and we look for that, but it's better to talk to an admissions advisor at the school that you're interested in to get a better idea of like what that means. Because you already may have some work experience that could be valuable to that. We just don't know until we sort of look at it. So I'm gonna be very poignant here. You sometimes don't know what you're thinking when you read the questions or read the criteria of the application. So you need to talk to someone who can be helpful to help you decipher what that really actually means. And it's not a hard process, and there's not going to be a lot of getting through the barrier of trying to figure out like what does this look like. The reason why these people have the jobs to be the admissions advisors is to help you decipher what the application process means. So they're there to do that. So if you watch the Downton Abbey, don't make them feel like they're not essential in the workforce that they're a part of. The environment that they belong to this is their responsibility, is to help you get into graduate school. And then back to the topic, there's never a good time. Someone asked yesterday, like, is there support for someone who's working full time? Yeah, to some degree. But the thing is that I did my master's and I worked the whole time, full time. And I did all of my research projects on the institution that I was working in. But the thing is that, and then, for those who are amazing, some of them have babies while they're in their master's and more incredibly in their PhD programs. So it's one of those things where the storyline here is that, you know, we want you to go to school, but we also want you to be able to know that a part of this is your willingness to commit to it so that we can learn how to be supportive to that. You know, and we can be very, you know, blunt and factual about what that looks like, but we can also be very supportive and figuring out like how to problem solve and critical think through situations. You know, sometimes, you know, graduate school, you know, or Grad Horizons, what they do with the students, which I think is super incredible, is that maybe a student thinks that they should be a lawyer, but then you begin to talk to them and they have a very incredible interest in sort of solving educational problems. And so now the conversation is like, do I go into an educational program or do I go into a law program? Or is there anything like educational law? You know, so just trying to figure out how do you bring you more into the process than just sort of like glomming on to something that you think is like out there to be helpful. Because the more important piece, as I'm going to say again, is as you begin to tell us a little bit more about how your interests incorporate into the next step of grad school, the more important it will be for us to make sure that you succeed. And we all have those resources. And sometimes, as I think that Marie just mentioned, as she actually did, like, you know, a public policy program may work for you. However, you have a conversation with her and she's like, well, maybe this policy program is not the one for you. Maybe you should consider this, or maybe you should consider that school, or maybe you should go into an education program. You know, that's the thing that we try to do. And we try to help you make the decision about getting into the proper school that's going to be helpful to what you want to do. Another thing that came up, and I think, you know, some of the demonstration from Gina's presentation, like there are some programs that are driven to the idea of making scholars of you. So they want you to be teachers, they want you to be faculty members at the institutional level. So, I mean, at a higher ed level. But sometimes programs are really pragmatic where they're like, we want you to work in the community. You know, we want you to do application process, you know, and we want you to sort of figure out like how to drive these type of projects to do X, Y, and Z. So realize that there is not a set type of graduate program at a master's level, and there's not a set type of program at a PhD level. And you should be willing to shop around to find the program that really like helps you perform as you versus you trying to fit into a mold that may not work and struggle. I had a conversation at a PhD program at University of Arizona where that was the content. They're like, you're a pragmatic practitioner. We want you to become a scholar. You would succeed in this program, but you would hate it. And I was just like, well, but you have a lot of great people I want to work with. You can enroll in another program and you can work with those people. But this program is not the one for you. And very helpful, useful information. And so be willing to sort of lend yourself to the conversation in a way that sort of helps open up the way that we can help you do that work. So with that, I don't know if there's anything else that anybody wants to contribute, any questions that are from the audience. I can call on people, but we're a minute over. So I'm just gonna open up to any last words of advice for students looking to get into programs, whether they be education or not, from the panel.
You know, this time right now is a great time because, as you notice, most of the deadlines are not till the end of the end of the year, like almost a year from now, not quite a year from now. So if that's the case, then you can factor in, okay, I'm gonna spend an hour a week or something, you know, where I'm gonna talk to somebody at a program, I'm gonna look online, you know, and just kind of schedule that in, like, okay, I have 1 hour a week that I'm gonna do something to learn more, and then you'll start to narrow it down. Because like I said, and like what Jack just said, you know, it's not necessarily, oh, I have to do a degree in this particular area or this particular title, right? Sometimes you find these odd programs that, you know, even schools that you didn't think about, you know, might have a particular program with that just fits exactly. That's what happened with me. I found a program at Boston University. It doesn't exist anymore, so I sorry about that. But it was the perfect program for me. And it was the only one in the country, and it doesn't exist anymore. So, you know, sometimes you can slip in before the door shuts.
Yeah, I think one thing that really resonated when Jack was speaking is it really is an ever evolving process. I know when I was looking at graduate programs, I took my first GRE in 2014. It was in school psychology. Was looking to apply, didn't apply, started thinking about it back in 2017. And I was like, not 100% sure where I want to go yet. And it wasn't until 2018 where I was just stuck and frustrated at work. And I'm like, this is why I need to. And so it's a process, and just really tune into your surroundings. I think something that now I like really emphasize, what is frustrating wherever you are at the moment, and why is it frustrating? And is that something you want to pursue to really help that frustration really calm itself so you can actually move forward? And even when I did my graduate program just a few years ago, even during my program, it was like, I'm going to do this. And then 2 weeks later, I was like, actually, I'm really excited. And be open to that. Just go with it, go with the flow. You're always learning new things. You're always connecting with people. And so again, what John was saying, make that time to be intentional in reaching out to others, just being open to listening and engaging, and being okay that you don't have to have it figured out. Because even when I finally decided to go for my program in 2018, part of me was like, is this really the right time to go? Do I want to leave the students that I'm working with? So there really isn't ever a great time to start a program or leave your job. It's just go with your gut feeling, I think, is what I'm trying to say here too.
And the students that I've coached to graduate school, for master students, they always ask me, like, is it normal to want to quit your grad program in the first or second week? And I'm like, yes, you want to quit it the whole way through. But the thing is you finally get to that last semester, the fourth semester, and I'm just like, why do you want to quit? You've got like, a couple of months left, so just do it. So yeah, just know that that's going to be an ever evolving story for you. And working full time made me want to quit hourly. So, it's one of those things that the reward for me was the people that I met in the program, and the stuff that I learned and the skills that I developed, and just sort of being able to be a better practitioner in reference to thinking about organizational development, and being able to become a better facilitator, and growing skills that I had developed, but just needed to be more honed and more guided and more illuminated. So just know that it's not about like having to learn new things. It's more about growing who you are to not potential, but actually sort of dig underneath the potential to get to the thing that, you discover a little bit more about the solidness of what you can offer to the world. And then that drives the capacity for you to learn how to give that back to the world. And that's the kind of conversation that we're hoping that we can invoke in this, because, grad school, people are thinking that it's just sort of a hierarchical structure where if you get this degree, you're more competitive. True, but ultimately, like, it just sets you up to be a better person, to be helpful. We had a conversation a little bit about becoming healers. And if you believe that you need to do something in the world, like, it gives you a better sense of like how to do that. And it drives you to sort of believe that you can do it. So, and I think that that's the super important part of like stepping into this new career path for yourself. So with that, someone wrote, thank you very much for this opportunity. Oh, John, you did. So thank you for sending that out. Thank you all again for joining us today. And we will be sending out this information and turning it onto our YouTube.